Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where we love geeky wisdom. If you're new to the channel, my name's Brian, and today we're going to discuss taking inspiration from the classics to help shape your role-playing game adventures. You know, a show that's been extremely popular in recent years is HBO's Succession. It's been a big hit with both the viewers and the critics, and the writing, acting, and overall production are pretty fantastic. But did you notice that some of the characters and the themes have things in common with classics? For example, the show's central theme of power struggles within a wealthy and dysfunctional family sort of reminds me of Shakespeare's King Lear. It even shares some of the character dynamics that you might see in Crime and Punishment. And it's pretty easy to understand why so many people go back over and over again to the classics to draw some inspiration. I mean, it's no secret, George Lucas has even said he is a huge Akira Kurosawa fan, and if you watch The Hidden Fortress and then watch the original Star Wars or Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, you'll see the correlations there. But we can do the same thing. We can draw inspiration from the classics, those tried and true stories, and use those in our own role-playing game adventures. But there's a key difference between what we're doing with a game and what they're doing with books and movies and plays. They're writing a book, movie, or play, and we want our players to have agency. We want them to make the choices that develop the story. And we also have dice to help decide what the consequences are of whatever choices that they're making. But we can certainly draw inspiration from classics and make it fun and engaging at the table and make it reminiscent of things that the players already sort of are familiar with. But an important note is, as a game master, it's important to realize that I don't want to do a direct adaptation. In fact, that's the exact opposite of what I want to do. I just want inspiration, not adaptation. It will feel like railroading my players down a certain path if I try to make a direct adaptation of a specific story that was written from beginning to end. In fact, it may be useful to pull some elements from multiple sources. So today, we're going to talk about using themes and motifs, character archetypes, settings and locations, plot elements, and narrative structures from both classical and contemporary books and literature and plays and movies to enhance our role-playing games. First things first, though, let's talk about adapting themes and motifs from various sources. The idea is that these are patterns that recur throughout a story. Think love and betrayal in Romeo and Juliet. And when I look at themes and motifs, I think about the ones I like first because, hey, I'm the game master, it has to be something I like too. But I also want to see how it fits in with the world I've created with my players thus far. So starting there lets me craft some creative ideas for potential encounters and challenges and quests that reflect the themes of the inspirational work I'm drawing from. For example, if I want to draw upon the power and corruption of The Godfather, I might design a storyline where the players have to navigate a dangerous world of crime families and political intrigue, and I can create encounters that challenge the characters' morality and put them in situations where they have to make difficult choices. Now, I can also borrow character archetypes. These are the recurring character types that are found in literature, theater, and movies, and they've been around since the start of those mediums. Now, the player characters are the heroes, so let them create whatever archetypes they'd like, and you might be able to give a few examples for them when you talk about things in session 0, but you want them to play the character they want to play. Besides the player characters, there are other archetypes like the mentor or the trickster or even comic relief that I could use in the story. And don't stop at just books and traditional movies. You can look to animation. Maybe I want to have a wise old grandmother type character. I could use Grand Tala as inspiration, from Moana, and that might fit perfectly within the game that I'm running. Now, adapting settings and locations from literature or movies is actually a little bit more straightforward in some respects. I just might be changing it from a modern version to a more fantastical one, or changing, the feel of the level of technology or adding fantastical elements. So for example, if you're familiar with the post-apocalyptic setting of The Road, we could use that same concept. We could put it in an isolated or desolate region of the continent where resources are really scarce. My encounters could kind of emphasize the importance of resource management and cooperation, and my NPCs could really threaten those resources in the area if I need to. Okay, so incorporating plot elements might be the first thing I think about. When I think of a story, I often think of the plot and the story structure, but it's usually the trickiest to pull off correctly. It's still very possible, but because this is not a direct adaptation and we're creating our own story as we play, it's a little tricky to pull off. I could still draw inspiration from storylines and use those as certain elements in the game. Just have to make sure, like I said, that it fits in well with what we're doing. Maybe I have to reskin some encounters, but I think that usually you can find some key elements that are really cool and pull them from different types of things. So if you wanted to have a heist, you could pull from Ocean's 11, for example, and that would be your high stakes robbery type scenario. But that would mean that you have to adapt this for a role-playing game. So maybe you would just have the players define what the plan is because it's their characters that they're, using to pull off the heist, and then you would adapt as the game master to kind of design the scenario around their plan to hopefully make it interesting and engaging and fun for everybody. Okay, so I thought it would be good to kind of put together an example outline. This isn't a full adventure, it's just an outline. So I'm going to use some classic movies, or at least what I consider classic movies, and I'm going to pull from Seven Samurai, Heat, and The Great Escape. And I'm going to call my adventure The Magnificent Heist. No promises, by the way, on how this will actually play out. This is just an outline, like I said, so I'll put it in the description below so you can take this and run with it and make it whatever you like. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the themes of honor and teamwork and perseverance from Seven Samurai. And during Session 0, I'm going to explain that the main premise of the adventure is that there's a group of characters that have to band together and protect a vulnerable community. In this circumstance, it's going to be a crime syndicate known as the Weavers. Now, throughout the campaign, I'll make sure to show them how their heroic efforts are impacting the community and building bonds between some of the other characters. Also in Session 0, I will throw out a few ideas if they're having trouble coming up with ideas for what types of characters they want to play. So I could suggest some basic archetypes just by talking things through. But if we know that this is the theme of the campaign that we would like to play, then maybe just throwing some ideas out will help them sort of craft their own character in a way that fits the campaign pretty well. I might suggest a few things from Heat, like, a skilled professional or a dedicated detective that will be, something that fits well into the story, and the characters could jump in and create something similar. But I'll introduce the NPCs that represent the community members, the Weavers, and sort of simulate all those diverse dynamics that come into play between characters. For the setting, I'm going to take inspiration from the prison camp environment from The Great Escape. Maybe it won't be a direct one-to-one relationship, but just the idea that the Weavers are controlling various districts within this area, and that's similar to the way the prison camps worked within The Great Escape. So I can think through, what are some unique features of each district? What are the potential hazards and resources, or even, secret escape routes that they might be able to use? Now, I'll let the plot develop as we go. I'll have some overarching points that I want to make sure that we're baiting them with as players that they can hook onto, hook your players. But there are a couple plot elements that will fit in really nicely, like recruiting a team of specialists. That happens in both the Seven Samurai and in Heat. And the players may also be able to plan and execute a series of heists to weaken the Weavers a little bit by liberating certain areas that are under their control. And maybe I'll use the classic MacGuffin. I'll have something that they're trying to grab and control, and that weakens the Weavers even more. In this case, I'll call it the Mirror of Souls. Yeah, that sounds cool. So by kind of combining all of these unique elements from a few different popular stories, I can create an engaging campaign that feels both new and familiar at the same time. Because some of these concepts are tried and true for a reason. They are elements of storytelling that have been around forever. Now, this is just an outline, like I said, but I'll have a link in the description if you want to change things up and come up with a campaign for yourself. So there you have it. Drawing inspiration from the classics or even contemporary literature and movies and plays and whatever, inspires you can help make your role-playing game more immersive and just fun. Don't worry if this game starts straying too far away from what you originally thought. Remember, inspiration, not adaptation. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing and doing all those things. It really does help the channel, and it helps me make more content like this, and it helps people find it. So we really appreciate you doing that. I'd like to leave you with a little bit of geek philosophy from Mark Twain, another classic storyteller. There is no such thing as a new idea. It is impossible. We simply take a lot of old ideas and put them into a sort of mental kaleidoscope. Cheers.